the best artistically. And that's the time I realized that I've always limited myself because someone thought I was not good enough, or someone reported me as that category. Yeah, so from that A plus to that A and A minus, B plus, and that was fifth in line, and that was really low. So therefore, we need not only focus on assessments, but on our reporting systems too. And we need to take that forward too. For this reason, the selection, presentation, and distribution of information must be directed to improve educational development of students, as well as quality of educational programs. Emphasis should be given to identifying and reporting educational progress and growth, rather than comparison of individuals or schools. That's why we were questioning whether formative assessment is truly done as formative assessment, or is it just a mini summative when you include it as a part of the grading process. And at the end of it all, when you come back to the end of this table, what you see is it all must link back to the learner, whose traits you identified at the beginning. I want a critical thinker, I want health conscious, technology savvy, resilient individual, whatever it is that you choose that you want. Does it link back? Does it all work back? Did I get what I wanted? So often we need to go back and analyze. Did we get the child we wanted? Whenever we have professional development sessions for teachers, I always tell a teacher, you must remember, you teach a child and not a subject, especially secondary school teachers. We go into class, pick up our books, teach the subject, and we're out. We made it interesting, fantastic. But what about the child? Very important to think we teach a child and not a subject. So when you at your end answer all these questions for yourself, you know whether your assessment structure meets the outcomes you have identified. So every time you need to move back to each and every question. Did my assessment get me a critical thinker? Did my assessment get me a health-conscious kid? Did it do that? A positive child? Was my assessment structure leading to a child who has a positive attitude towards life? All these are very important things to check. As we move further, we've realized unless you think and you bring what we know as educational assessment into the classroom, and there is clarity of terms, assessment will not be implemented in its true spirit. Yeah? So discussion of any subject must proceed from a clear understanding of the meaning of the terms being used. Terms are frequently used interchangeably, although they should have distinct meanings. 4 terms that are used over and over in educational assessment: evaluate, test, measure, and assess. Today I'm going to share an interesting research paper presented by Carolyn Coyle on assessments. She's used a bottle of water, an analogy that even you can use with your teachers, parents, all stakeholders to understand, to consider, and explain assessment terminologies. She says she finds it easier to understand an educational topic by viewing it first through another lens. So when we're looking at educational assessment through a bottle of water, what are we going to do? How would you assess the bottle of water? How would you measure it? How would you test it? And how might you evaluate it? So if we were to assess the bottle of water, well, these questions would have come from you, but I'm stating them because we're not having a very major interactive session out here. So some of the questions that you'd ask is, you'd look at the bottle, see if it's cloudy or clear, taste it, is it colored, read the label to find out where it's from, smell it to see if it smells okay. So you'd look at all the criteria, okay? These are the questions if you were to assess the bottle. If you were measuring the bottle of water, what would you do? Read the label, Put it on a scale and weigh it. Pour it into a measuring cup. Use a thermometer and record the temperature, and so on and so forth. If you were testing the bottle of water, you could do a taste test. Put it under a microscope and do a test. You could test it for harmful bacteria. And evaluating the bottle of water, was it drinkable and refreshing? Do I like it? How was it in comparison to other bottles of water I've had? And did it give me good value for money? If these are the questions you're going to ask, let us see what it means in educational terms. So, what does it tell us? Assess is the broadest of the 4 terms. It is any method or procedure by which we gather information to find out about something in as many ways as possible. You can still see those questions on top. Yeah? You're looking at a 360-degree criteria. It can be a very formal procedure, such as tests, or it can be quite informal, such as an observation. Assessing something may mean you measure, test, or evaluate it. In school, assessments should be viewed in a similar way. There are hundreds of different ways to assess students. As with the bottle of water, gathering data and information from many sources and building on that knowledge over a long period of time is the most thorough and valid way to assess student performance. We move on to measurement. Measurement always means giving quantity in some way. Usually, measurements are expressed numerically. The important thing to remember when you use a measurement is that everyone has to agree and understand the meaning behind the number. You can measure lots of things and end up with a different number for each. Like, when you pour it into a measuring cup, you'd get a different measure. But when you use a thermometer and record the temperature, that would be a different measure. Measurement for our bottle of water are only appropriate when the standard of measurement is known. In education, we face the same dilemma. We use numbers in schools to indicate many different things. It is essential that students and parents understand what the numbers mean and how measurements can be translated to give us information on student learning and student progress. The next, testing student performance. A test is only a small sample of a whole. If you are going to test the water, we're probably not going to use the entire bottle to do it. Similarly, if you go to the doctor for a blood test, he's not going to drain all the blood out of you for your test. In education, test scores sometimes carry more weight than they should, and that's what we're seeing all around. Tests are one measure, but that is all of student learning. We should not reduce assessment to testing and must see testing as separate from learning. A test score should be used in conjunction with other types of assessments for us to get the picture of what students know and are able to do. Evaluating. Evaluating student performance means making some kind of value judgment about it. Evaluations are usually made when we use the data we've gathered from our observations, assessments, tests, and measurements, and combine this knowledge with what we already know. One needs to consider all information about something before making a valid evaluation. Evaluating students is an important part of every teacher's job. As we would with the bottle of water, it is essential that we consider all information about a given student before evaluating him. Teacher judgments can sometimes be informal in nature, but most of the time we also need more formal assessment instruments to help us evaluate students accurately as well as fairly, since the trust factor, as Professor Sharma said, is still to be built with teachers. Therefore, we as educators need to widen the scope through which we view CCEs and take into account all criteria of the web of authentic assessments to ensure best practices are occurring within our classrooms. Thank you.